because they want the resources, the gold, the silver. That is our Holocaust, and then we're living in it right now. This is a genocide on our people, but it seems like nobody hears that. Nobody has listened to the indigenous people. I think that, you know, we as indigenous people also have become very psychologically damaged, that our politicians seem to think that if they work with the American politicians that we can get justification for certain things that has happened to us. But it hasn't worked. There is no justification for what has happened to us and what continues to happen to us.
It seems a bit like, you know, the Armenian genocide. It
Yes,
seems like a
yes.
big taboo that's
Yes.
not spoken about.
Yes, yes, absolutely. My daughter and myself and my grandson were stopped as we had an all-night ceremony here, and we danced all night. And at that time my daughter was working in Tucson. We were traveling in a small sedan, and we got pulled over in 2005, I think it was, and I was told to say whether I was a U.S. citizen or a Mexican citizen, and I was trying to be funny and joke around. I said, well, you know, I'm an Altam here on my land, you know, where are you from? And the Border Patrol got really upset, and he unhooked his pistol, put it at my head, and said that you will say you're a Mexican citizen or a U.S. citizen, or I will throw you on the pavement, I will handcuff you, and I will deport you. And my daughter was crying, my grandson was crying. I said, I'm Altam, and where are you going to deport me to? Are you going to deport me to Mexico? Because that's my homeland too. My father's village is in Mexico, all Altam. The 9 existing villages in Mexico right now, where there used to be 74 villages. Now there's 9 remaining villages. So it continues. There seems that this confrontation, it was a confrontation that we had just earlier in front of my gate. They don't want to understand what the issues are, why we're concerned, why we're upset, why we feel that we have to voice our concerns, because they don't want to understand. I don't know what else to do.
Please tell us the story one more time where you were asked by the Border Patrol if you were a U.S. citizen or a Mexican citizen. I want to, if you can retell it.
Oh, yes. We have a ceremony here called Tohono, and we have a dance. We dance all night, and I participate in that every year. And my daughter was working in Tucson, so we're driving back to Tucson, and we got pulled over by a Border Patrol, and he immediately asked me to state my citizenship, whether I was a U.S. citizen or a Mexican citizen. And I said, I'm an Altam. I'm an Altam. You're on my land. Where are you from? So he immediately unclipped his pistol on his side, and he put it at my head. He said, you will say you're a U.S. citizen or Mexican citizen. And he did that in front of my daughter, and my grandson was little, and both of them started crying, and but he continued to say that he would deport me. He would throw me on the pavement, handcuff me, and deport me. And I said, I'm Altam, you're on my land. Where are you going to deport me to? And you're going to deport me to Mexico. That's my land too. My community is on that side too. And at that point, another Border Patrol came and saw what was happening, and it stopped. And we went on. But for a long time, my grandson, who was little, to make a little pistol with his hand and just go, you know. And he's not exposed to that at all. So we don't watch TV, you know. We know what's on there. We want it to raise him right, but for a while that's what he would do. He'd point his little fingers, and that's in the American language, that's being traumatized by this experience. But you know, that's everybody's child on this reservation. Everybody's child has gone through that.
Please tell us some more about what you encountered with the Border Patrol and why it got you so angry when you met that Border Patrol woman just before.
You know, the Tohono Nation, which is a government that mimics the United States government, we also have traditional leaders, and we also have ceremony leaders that takes precedence over this new government, but they don't get listened to. So we have a problem from the beginning when our tribal government is weak to not stand up against the Border Patrol and demand our rights. We have a right to be here. We have a right to hunt. We have a right to walk on our land. We have a right to say no and not want things that they're proposing. And so not only have the government claims that they give the Border Patrol culture sensitivity training. What does that mean, you know? Do they know now to speak our language? Do they know what our mountains mean? Do they know what our sacred plants mean, our people mean on this land? No, it doesn't mean that. And so they continue to traverse all our land, not only with the vehicle that they had, that four-wheel vehicle, but the cars and the jeeps and the motorbikes and horses and helicopters and jet planes and drones. I mean, and then also to put up all these spy technology, the towers, and not only the towers, but the portable towers that they put up to. That tower that's sitting up here on the mountain is facing the village. It's not facing the border. So they're monitoring us. And why, you know, this happen? So many times, you know, we continue to talk about this, but everybody will say, well, you're wards of the government. This reservation is given to the people by the government. But in our oral histories, we were here when this land was created. We were here when the sacred mountains were created. We have been here for thousands of years. We did not come across the Bering Strait. We did not come from Mexico. We were here. And that's why we know about our area and our land, you know. And so just to start there, you know, that it's a greater issue, it's a greater conflict of our people. When I was, how old was I? I was in 5th grade, I think. I got sent to boarding school. And that's my generation. I'm 58 years old. I got sent to a boarding school. And then I got sent to Nevada to a boarding school where I stayed there. But before that, people were sent to boarding schools. When I was sent to a boarding school, I couldn't be with my brothers and sisters because then we'd share things. We'd talk our language. So they're trying to strip away who we are. That we're all them, that we can't speak our language, we can't do our ceremonies, and that we could just be U.S. citizens and not be distinct in our culture. That has not worked because we still speak our language and we still continue to do our ceremonies that we've been mandated to do since the beginning of time. That is the beginning of who I am as an O'odham. I live in that culture. I speak English because it was forced on me to speak English. And I went to a boarding school to learn these things, how to be a non-O'odham, but I can't be. So there's a problem there, you know, when some people did really embrace that assimilation and indoctrination, and some people didn't. And right now, that's a great conflict within our people. People that comply, with the demands of the government, whether it's, building a road through our lands, building an international border, or bringing the U.S. military, National Guard and the Border Patrol. And then there's us that live in the conditions that we live in right here, and we have to endure all that impacts our land. And we pray for the land. We know the songs to the mountains. We know the songs to the plants that we feed ourselves with, and we'll continue to be like that until whenever the world ends. We'll still be here. We're not going anywhere.
And how do you feel about the crazy claim by the Border Patrol that terrorists are crossing and that's why they're making the barrier?
Well, there's a major meeting in December 15th, 2014, and I asked that of the higher up Border Patrol. How many terrorists have crossed this border that you yourself, the U.S. government, have labeled terrorists? How many have crossed our border within the 74 border of Tohono Nation on the international border? And they said no, not zero. Nobody has crossed. And then they start saying, well, there's drug trafficking, there's human trafficking. I said, there's drug trafficking, human trafficking, before that, before 9/11. And it's not just here in the Tohono Nation, it's on all the borders. Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and they claim that the terrorists that came through Canada. And this was the question that led up to that, is how many towers are going to be built on this border, of the U.S.-Mexico border, Canada border, to protect American lives? They said there's 5 in Douglas, which is southeast of here. East of here. And then 5 in another town called Vaca, which is just on the other side of the mountain range. And then 15 on the Tohono Nation. I said, 15? And nowhere else in the United States, but 15 on the Tohono Nation. I kind of feel like guinea pig. You're testing out this technology. You don't have any statistic of how it's going to impact human life, how it's going to impact our animal life, our plant life, in the next 24 years. I'll be dead and gone by then, and nobody's going to come and say, we didn't know these, But I think I got away from the question.
Oh, that was really interesting. Now I forgot what I asked.
I know. Can I have some water?
Sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
You asked about, I
Sorry,
also
I
forgot
was
because
so picky in what you were saying,
Yeah.
so I was also carried away.
Yes, about the terrorists.
with the
Oh
terrorist,
yeah. Yes, because I think most of this documentary what I found really strange here is the whole militarization of this entire border fence, and in Europe it's also some similar situation going on, and it's just very, like, normal citizens should be very suspicious about their own countries being turned into like war zones. Which I think is not right, and then it's always like justified by the migrant, people trafficking and the cartel, and on and on.
It's overlooked because of that.
What do you
The real
think?
situation.
What do you think? Why they're doing that? What do you think? What's your theory?
On the militarization? I don't know. Sorry.
It's okay.
When the build-up of the Border Patrol and again, we question that. We question who are these secret, you know, who is the building, who are the contractors, you know, who are the contractors building this thing? Right now, Elbit is putting up the towers, which is an Israeli company that's building the technology to build those towers. And we're saying, what does this look like? You know, what does this look like? It's complete militarization. For what reason? We've asked that question. For what reason? We don't get a really good response to that. And why this area? Are they looking at our resources? And it's because we're almost completely inundated by the policies of the government. I mean, we're already considered subhuman from the beginning. I mean, all our skulls that are sitting in the Smithsonian Institute that trying to claim whether we're human or not human. And then now, with all our human rights violated, you know, we don't understand that. But we can see the picture of what's happening in other countries and what has happened to other countries. The complete militarization, taking of our lands, which is starting with the towers. They're going to be taking a lot of land. They're already taking some land with their stations. So it's very suspicious. And nobody has answered that question. I've asked that at the United Nations. I've asked that question. Why is the United States, you know, militarizing our lands? Why are they violating our rights? Can we have an official come from the United Nations and come to our lands to investigate? So when the Special Rapporteur for Human Rights of Indigenous People from the United Nations came, our tribal leaders tried to stop them from entering the reservation. We secretly brought them in, and we became a part of the United Nations official report on this question. But there has